Okay, there we go. All right, I'll share my screen. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, there we go. So this is the topic of attraction and mate selection. So the reason why this is titled this way is when it comes to attraction, we can be attracted to several different individuals and peoples and groups and the like. But then when it comes to mate selection, we narrow it down to usually a single individual that we feel like we can have a intimate, romantic, and usually reproductive and sexual relationship with. So attraction kind of puts out this wide swath of possibilities. And then when we go into mate selection, we narrow it down to very specific individuals, usually, as we will see. Um, and so, again, when we talk about the attraction, we're concerned with the desire for a voluntary relationship sustained because participants enjoy each other. Okay. Um, and some things to consider, according to again the research we have, or the majority of the research we have, is we found that there are three really um, um, forces that really determine our attraction style. Okay, first of all is of course the biological, genetic, and evolutionary implications of attraction and mate selection. Obviously, we're driven to reproduce and replenish the population, as you would say, based on this evolutionary notion of continuation of the species. And as we will see, there are some biological markers that we use to determine who is a healthy partner versus an unhealthy partner. Okay. But if that was the end of the story, we would probably all be what we call a homogeneous population, meaning we would have all went for those same very healthy individuals, and it would have created a homogeneous population. Okay. The problem with that is, from at least a evolutionary perspective, is when everybody is attracted to the same people, the same individuals, that makes it so you have to specialize into a given environment. Okay. The more diverse the population is, the more environments the population can go into and adapt to. Okay. So there's this genetic evolutionary push to create both diversity within our population, but also to try and make sure reproduction occurs to the benefit of a given species. And I should put this in terms of species, not just necessarily human beings. Okay. For humans, though, we go into some other areas because, as noted several times in this class, much of our brain develops physically in the social cultural world that we exist in. Okay, so for humans, and some other primates, it could be argued, we also have some socially shared norms that determine who we are attracted to and who we are not attracted to. Okay, and these socially shared norms are things like, for example, some religions have the social norm that you only wed within that religion. So they're not necessarily attracted to, or they avoid attraction to. I should put it in that terminology. They avoid attraction to someone who is outside that religion or outside that ethnicity, or even if you want to think about it on a national level, outside of your national identity. as you would say. Okay. Um, I can make jokes about the South, but I won't. Just kidding. But those are kind of socially shared norms that are some example of socially shared norms that we all have. Okay. Then we take it from the social cultural level to the idiosyncratic level. Okay. Idiosyncratic means individuals' preferences. Okay. So we all share some social norms, some biological drives, but we all then develop based on our own specific experiences different attractions that we have. Okay. So, for example, you might have a socially shared norm that you should only be attracted. I'll bring up an example in maybe my world of I'm only supposed to be attracted to European white women. Yet here I am married to a Mexican American woman because of my idiosyncratic preference. Okay. And that's just an example of individual level preferences. Some individuals are attracted to larger individuals, some are attracted to skinny, some are attracted to athletic. There's terms that I hear now called dad bods that people are attracted to. And those are all kind of on the individual level, the individual preference level. Okay. And that is one of the difficulties in studying human attraction. Okay. Because we can look at we can really tie down the whole biological kind of uh, continuation of the species things. We can get to the social norms and stuff like that. But in human populations, because of the idiosyncratic levels, those social norms may only apply to 50% of individuals within that social group, and but the rest are very much more diverse in their attraction. Okay, so in the world of psychology, they've kind of developed what are called the three principles of attraction, which tend to go across culture, and that's why these are called principles. Okay, but you'll see that they're very, very broad in their scope. Okay, the first principle of attraction is the principle of familiarity. Okay. And yes, as you might notice, Mark Twain's quote here at the bottom, familiarity breeds both contempt and children. Okay. Because what the principle of familiarity means basically states, using a lot of research done in the area of social psychology, is whenever we're introduced to a novel person, our warning systems go off. Basically, is this person safe? Is this person someone who is beneficial to be here? Okay. This puts our guard up. So we're not very likely to be instantly attracted to somebody, even if we find them very physically attractive, physically, we may not engage them until we have experience with them. Okay. Now, again, you'll probably see this is in general. If you look at some of the TV shows where people get married in 24 hours and they see how long it lasts and those kinds of things. This is again a general principle. Okay. Now, what happens though after time and the person established that they're a safe person is something called the mere exposure effect. Okay. What the mere exposure effect is I let's say we were in a live class and um, I wanted to kind of at the end of the semester show the mere exposure effect. So I planted a student who um, was rude, always interrupting, maybe didn't dress well for class, didn't shower, all those kinds of things, and I measured at the beginning of the semester your liking of that person. Okay, well, in general, in general, at the beginning of the semester, you'd probably rate the individual pretty low. But you kind of, nah, this person is kind of not my style. Okay. Without changing anything, though, without asking the person to be more kind, to be less obnoxious, to dress appropriately for class, and all of those things, and making sure that person stayed consistent in the behavior, if I measured liking at the end of the semester, on average, his liking scale would go up, not down. Okay. This is the mere exposure effect, that we tend to like individuals more and more just by their mere appearance in our life consistently. Okay. Now, am I going to say that he's going to be your best friend at the end of the semester, or that you're going to invite him over for a carne asada or anything? No, I'm just saying that the scale would be tipped upward and not downward. Okay. Um, this mere exposure then over time creates familiarity, which then creates attraction. And this is the law of familiarity. I need to check something real quick. Okay. Now, where is the evidence for this effect? Okay. Well, you probably have heard, and this is going to go through all of these principles. We'll see them this come out a lot. Is we tend, well, in familiarity, I'll do that. Hold on, let me rewind. Let's let's deal with familiarity more clearly. Is that, where's the evidence for this? Well, in most of it comes from the sociological domain, where we find that pre-globalization, meaning before the internet, people tended to marry individuals that were in a 6 block radius of their home. I think out at the Tohono Nation, we'd have to expand that to maybe 6 miles. But the idea being is that the majority of the time we tended to date people who were in the same neighborhood, went to the same church. Work was a very common place where people met and got married, got attracted, and went on. And so it's so most of the evidence comes from that sociological evidence. Now, the issue has been is that we now have globalization, right? So we could be here in southern Arizona and be romantically chatting with someone in Paris, France, as an example. Okay. And that can create some what we call attraction. Okay. But the law of familiarity still holds, because those feelings of strong wanting an attachment, wanting a physical relationship, happens over a series of chats, a series of continually talking to that individual. Okay. So even that kind of rule kind of sticks as long as there's that consistent exposure via some mediums, chat rooms, video chat, those kinds of things, that then continues that attraction. And again, as Mark Twain put it, familiarity breeds contempt and eventually children. The second principle is the principle of similarity. Okay. Now, this goes back to the old question: do opposites attract, or do the birds of the same feather flock together? What is the kind of recipe? Okay, and I want to make it very clear: there is a subpopulation of individuals who are very much attracted to someone who is completely opposite to them. Okay. But in general, we tend to be attracted to people who are at our same social economic status, our same education level, our same ethnicity, our same religion or spiritual beliefs, our same ideas about politics and those kinds of things. Those tend to be individuals who tend to be more attracted to each other. Okay. Now, where is the evidence for this, though? Because in a culture that focuses on diversity, we're always saying you need to get out there, meet different people, all those kinds of things. This principle actually comes from research that looks at long lasting, happy relationships. Okay. Meaning that people who tend to be in 10, 20, 30, 40-year relationships that are both measure high in relationship satisfaction. They still love each other and are very affectionate with each other. They've maintained a healthy sex life. They tend to, when they got together, they tended to have more things that were similar than opposite of each other. People who tend to end relationships early, who tend to have a very rocky relationship, tend to have very unsatisfied relationships. Those individuals tend to be opposites. They tend to not be very similar. Okay. Now, what's going on according to the research on this is if you want to think about it this way, when you are in a relationship with someone who is like you don't have to psychologically invest in guessing what they need. Okay. When you're attracted to someone who is opposite to you, and let's say they get upset, you have to put the psychological effort into figuring out how to satisfy their needs because they're different from you. When you're dating someone who is similar to you, when they're happy, you understand why they're happy. When they're sad, you understand why they're sad. So you can respond to them. So your psychological energy isn't going into the guessing game, it's investing into the relationship because you already know how to react to each other. Okay, so that's the idea behind the principle of attraction, the principle of similarity, when it comes to how it results in long-lasting, satisfying relationships. And then the last principle is the principle of reciprocity. Okay, this is the principle of you want to know we are liked and thought well of. This is kind of a basic human drive. We want people to like us and think well that we're good, decent individuals. Okay. Therefore, positive attention leads to greater attention or greater attraction. Okay. So the more positive you are towards someone or the more positive they are towards you, the more likely attraction is to develop. Okay. However, this is one principle that has a caveat. Okay. And basically, this has, however, is too much can lead to it not working well for you. So I'll put these 3 bullet points into just a summary of what this is if you have someone who's attracted to you, you guys are dating and everything, and every morning you get this text that says, "Hey, beautiful, I bet you're sweet and kind this morning." And then you get one at noon going, "Oh, wow, you're the greatest person in the world," all this other stuff, da 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 da. But if you wake up grumpy and you wake up not feeling so attractive, and you're getting that text constantly, or at lunch you got in an argument with your boss, but then you're getting this text, ah, you're kind, you're sweet. You start to do what's called motive seeking in that kind of way. What is this person trying to get out of this? Because they're not being, as this second bullet point puts, they're not being authentically congruent. Okay, they're really just saying it for either their own gratifying needs, or they have a fear that if they don't give you that positive attention, you'll leave them, which goes to insecurity issues, those kinds of things. So the principle of reciprocity only works when it's done in an authentic, congruent way. That instead of texting, you're so beautiful in the morning, you should probably text and say, how are you this morning? And check in with them before providing them that kind of positive thoughts, as you would say. Okay. So these are kind of the three principles. And as you could see, these are very broad. Um, and this has been kind of one of the criticisms of studying attraction is these kind of principles and stuff. They're very broad and they could be applied in so many ways. Are they really capturing what attraction is? Okay. So that's one of the issues with those. Okay. Now, there has been research that's tried to look at, what are the universalities of attraction? Okay. Are there things that individuals across cultures, across genders, tend to find more attractive than others? Okay. And so I'm just going to bring up a few. Some common ones that have been found, and these are so, let's say these pictures here, we manipulate them in some way. So we make the jawline slimmer, we bring the eyes closer together, we make the nose bigger or smaller, and we have you do some comparisons, and we either physiologically measure your arousal, or we have you rate them on a scale of attractiveness or what you find most appealing or kind or whatever. Okay. We tend to find that these tend to be kind of some of the physical signs of attraction. So clear skin, signs of youth, of course, absence of sores is a sign of health, large, wide set eyes, small nose, small chin, predominant cheeks, tend to have been found to be kind of the quintessential signs of attraction. Okay. Now, as you would guess, I'm hoping you would guess that this probably, when we get to Wednesday, these right here are probably going to be challenged when we look at this from a cross-cultural basis. Okay. And we will definitely see this coming Wednesday, that these preferences based on cultures don't always hold. Okay. But there is one facial feature that does tend to be predominant across cultures. So there's one that, as we will see on Wednesday, holds whether you're a white European American, Native American, Chinese, Russian, Australian, and that is the universal of attractiveness, which is facial symmetry. Okay. So we find that the more symmetrical a face is, the more individuals are attracted to it. So we see this guy right here. Okay. This is his actual face. And as you can see, it lacks symmetry. This eyebrow is higher than this one? Is this eye's lower? This is higher, this is lower. And then this is a computer generated one, which makes his face symmetrical. Basically, they mirror the face. Okay. And then we randomly present this with a whole bunch of other things. And we ask things, is this person more likable? Is this one person more attractive? Would you date this person? Would you not date this person? Those kind of questions. And we find that this computer generated one, is the star. Okay. And what we have found is that the more symmetrical a face is, universally, no matter what culture you come from, the more attractive those faces are rated and are seen. Okay. And there's been three arguments, and the one that I think probably makes most sense is the third one, is that when we look at art and we look at things that people find pleasing to the eye, they tend to be symmetrical or aesthetically pleasing. Okay. And so we can look into the art world and we can find that the greatest works of art tend to have a symmetry about them, and a balance between colors and light and darkness and all of those things, that they tend to be very symmetrical in their presentation. Okay. The other one is familiarity, which, if you think about it, when you can match the right side of the face with the left, it becomes more and more familiar. It becomes more and more what our schema or our stereotype of what a human face should look like. Okay. But the one that probably has the most research support is that we have actually, if we measure facial symmetry, and then we measure some other things such as fertility rate, growth rate, survival, meaning, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of the fancy word for survival. Anyways, the probability of when someone will pass away is, I cannot remember the term. Developmental issues, meaning cognitive disorders or developmental delays. Okay, we find that the more asymmetrical the face is, the more we see developmental issues, fertility issues, slower growth rates, and poor survival rates. So it denotes something about the person's ability to survive in the world, one, and to propagate, survive children who will be healthy and developmentally good, or developmentally healthy. I should just leave it at that. And so this tends to be the main argument behind it, but I do think these first two probably play a role as well. But this is probably the only one, when it comes to facial features, that we will see on Wednesday sticks cross-culturally. Okay. Another one, so when we look at preferences between men and women, so these are universalities for men, and then we have universalities for women. We tend to see that men have a preference for youthful, good health, fertility, and it actually can be measured by what's called the weight to hip ratio. Okay. So if you measure the waist and the hip, and the ratio comes out to about 0.7, based on body configuration, the more attractive that woman tends to be rated. Now, I want to make this very clear. This 0.7 can be for a very large woman, or a very skinny woman, or a medium weight woman. This has nothing to do with weight. Weight tends to be an idiosyncratic and more of a cultural preference. This is just the simple ratio between the waist and the hip. Okay. Now, why 0.7? Okay. Well, 0.7, the more a woman's ratio is to 0.7, the more likely she is going to give a viable birth. Okay. The more the waist hip ratio deviates from 0.7, the higher risk of things like a stillbirth or an infant dying during the birthing process, or even the mother dying during the birthing process. So again, probably just like the symmetry argument, this one is probably a biological argument because we know that this is kind of the golden zone to be able to birth children healthy. Now, with that being said, remember there's a lot of diversity and a lot of variability in this. So it's not to say that a person, if they deviate from this, cannot give a healthy birth or anything like this. This is all general, okay? So I don't want to put that out there that if you're not at this ratio, that oh, I'm not going to be able to birth children. That's not what I want to hear. This is a population probability. Okay. So now what about women as far as universalities? Okay. Well, according to the research, there's a whole list. You know, when men just look at the hip and the waist and go, okay, no, I'm kidding. But women tend to have more of a do a little bit more analysis, I think. I'll just put it out there. So, what about women when it comes to men's face? Okay. Um, well, we know that cues of dominance, deep voices rather than high pitch, and stereotype faces. Okay, now let me go through these really quickly. Cues of dominance, where does this research come from? Okay, so this is where we have went and we've measured women's preferences. So there's women who want the strong, dominant, controlling kind of guy. And there's women who say, oh, I want this sweet, sensitive, kind type. Okay. And then we can put these in categories. But then we have them rate random pictures. Okay. And we have random pictures of more dominant faces, medium dominance, and then softer, kinder faces. Okay. And what we find is, regardless of what women tend to say they want, they tend to rate a dominant face as more attractive than a non dominating face. So, despite wanting the sweet, sensitive guys, women will rate a dominant face as more attractive than a sweet, soft face. Okay. The next one is a deep voice rather than a high pitched voice, and this is there used to be the BCC in England used to do this show where they would have again women come in and they would have a screen between them and a man on the other side of the screen, and they would have the man they would either have a man who has a low, deep voice or a man who has a high pitched voice cite the same poem. So as the river flows, or the as the river flows, okay. And then they would have the woman describe the man that they think is on the other side of the curtain, okay. And this is where kind of the showmanship of the show goes and whatnot. Is with the deep voice, they pictured someone who is very strong, athletic, intelligent, well groomed, and the high pitched guy is probably not well taken care of, not well groomed, not well, uh, um, um, not that attractive. Okay. Well, if you know what produces low voices, it's actually the man's body size, his body weight. And so usually they'd lift the curtain and they would have this very big guy who has that deep voice, and men who are actually very athletic and have the very muscular body because they don't have the body fat, they don't have the testosterone to support a deep voice. So they were the ones who were these strong, attractive, well-groomed guys, and it was funny to watch the women's expression on the faces. Point being, though, and this is a really good point. If you want to really get a girl to at least go out on a date with you, have a phone call with her first and do it in a really deep voice, because you'll more likely get the date and at least get to what is that? At least the what is that? Would be the batter's box to see if you can get them. So if you don't feel you're that attractive, do the phone call first with a deep voice, and then go from there. The other thing, and this is something that is definitely going to be challenged this Wednesday because it deals with stereotypes. But unfortunately, the majority of research is done with, again, the white Anglo individuals, is stereotype faces. And this is some examples of a jutted jaw, the angular eye, the craggy eye. I'm sorry, it's called a craggy eye, and an angular face. Okay, these tend to be the preferences when rating attraction. But I want you to pay close attention to the term stereotype, because as we will know, on the social norm, social cultural end, this is going to play a role into what we see as attractive based on our own culture, or who we are. So this one we are definitely going to challenge this coming Wednesday as far as finding the stereotype for a given group and what is attractive. Another one for women tends to be fads. Now, I want to be very deliberate on this one. When I say fads, I don't mean that they dress based on the Paris um, fads, or a New York City fad, or a California beach fad, or something like that. When we say fads are important, we're talking about local fads. Okay. So, for example, I've always taught in pretty rural colleges. Okay. And I've noted that when some outsider comes and does a presentation and they're in a three-piece suit and everything like that, people just kind of avoid them. Okay. But in the rural fads of, a t-shirt, nice jeans, or a polo shirt, or something like that, presenter will come in and they'll get a lot of attention because they're meeting that local fad of colleges I've taught in. Okay. Just as similar, if you go to a New York club dressed in just jeans and a t-shirt, you're probably not even going to get in the club, right? And this is what's meant by fads. Is, does the individual meet the local fads that are going in? And what does this cue, though? Is this cues that the individual is up to the times, is up to what's going on in the community, what's happening, and they're just not doing their own thing. So it kind of gives a kind of a, they understand your culture, your social world. Okay, and that's what's meant by fads. And then the other one is, we've been talking a lot about visual cues, but for women, smell tends to be very important, okay, in the attraction process. All right. So let me tell you about one of the examples of the research, and I'm going to simplify it for our context here. Okay. We're at a local college and we want to understand if smell has an influence on a person's attraction. So what we do is we have some freshly laundered t-shirts sitting in a booth. Okay. So they're just sitting in a booth, enclosed booth. And then we have the football team go and do a practice, 2-hour practice. And when they come back, um, I'll put C for cleaned laundered clothes in booth one. We put their sweaty uniforms in booth two. So I'm going to put F for our football players. Okay. And then we have individuals, and we're going to show them the same exact pictures in both booths. So you either get randomly assigned to the football player booth, or you get randomly assigned to the clean laundered booth. Regardless of which one you get assigned to, you're going to see the same pictures that you would if you were in the other booth. That's kind of the idea behind this. What we find is that even though both booths are presented with the same pictures, it's in the football player booth where the guys get the highest attraction ratings compared to the freshly laundered group. Okay. So you're probably out going, oh, wow, oh, so they like sweaty, stinky guys. No, that's not what I'm going to say in this. What further research beyond this, when men sweat, they tend to sweat testosterone. Okay. So in more controlled experiments, they had a booth where, again, in one booth was just clean laundered clothes. And then there was, in the other booth, there was clothes that we put a little testosterone on, just the liquid testosterone. And just like with this example here, the booth that has the testosterone in it tended to get higher attraction rating than the one that had just fresh laundered clothes in it. Okay. So smell. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is a female specific thing is that when we do things like use of estrogen or use of testosterone or anything like this, we do not find this effect for men. We only find this effect for women. Okay. And so it's kind of an interesting thing when we look at why women prefer colognes and all of those kinds of things. Well, what we're finding closer and closer, the clones that tend to women tend to like more tend to be more chemically similar to the chemical structure of testosterone than, say, estrogen or some other hormone. So there's that. So maybe that's another good dating advice for the guys. So one, call them first and use a deep voice. And then two, I think on Amazon you can buy some artificial testosterone and maybe splash that instead of the Old Spice. I don't know. Try it and let me know if it works.
What do we get extra credit if we do try it?
You know what? I would actually forgive one of the quizzes. Yes. Yeah, definitely. All right. Let's see. So we have mate selection. Let me see. Got to go in here. Let's do this. So we're going from attraction to mate selection. This should take about 15 minutes, and then we can get into the cultural aspects. So let's do this. Let's leave the mate selection part for this coming Wednesday, and then we'll have the cross-cultural comparisons um, uh, um, for the rest of the class on Wednesday. That way we're not blending the two too much. So let's go ahead and do that. Let me stop the recording.